I'm a hardcore atheist at this point. If there is a God, I hate him for my life, guaranteed. Like, I hate him for my childhood. I hate him for the things. Like, if there's a freaking God, I wanted nothing to do with him.
My thing going through rehab changed my perspective on who I'm teaching, who I'm coaching, and realizing, like, fuck, if we don't get our foundation correct, the rest of it doesn't matter.
I think a lot of times we should be shaping them, but really we're just packing things on that turns into baggage later, when really the sculpting process is really only removing. That's what the sculpting process should be. I just think it's also a painful process.
Well, Mr. Matt, welcome to the Real Rehab Experience. This is going to be fun.
I like how your voice changed right there.
Yeah, well,
like,
you know my radio voice. Yeah, you gotta get into it.
And welcome!
And welcome! Smart ass.
I love it. Matt, thanks for jumping in today, man.
Oh yeah, dude, thanks for having me.
I feel like I've talked to Steve about you so many times and wanted to kind of unpack your story a little bit, because I think there's so many motivational pieces that would probably just shed light on a lot of other people or create pathways of being like, oh my God, so much is possible.
I mean, from drug dealer to hope dealer. Right?
Right? Yeah. I think it's just life, man. We all have a story, right? It just, everybody's story is a little bit different, and and there's multiple occasions of what it looks like or how it's grown, and everybody has those things, right? So I think what it comes down to is are people willing to be vulnerable enough to actually share the story, right? And not just the good times. I think that in a social world we only talk about the good. Well, a lot of us have gone through shit that's been riddled with the bad, but I think the bad is it's more important than the good, right? Because if you're a believer, those are the when that's when you're forged, right?
Well, we don't succeed without failures, right?
I mean, what is really failure, dude? I was having a training class yesterday, and then failure came up, and everybody kind of glommed onto the word. I'm like, dude, what is why are we even putting a value on failure? Like, what is failure? It's just a blip of something that's going on in your life that you have to handle, but you're making it this monumental event. You know what I'm saying? It's just something that didn't go your way. So you're questioning
whether or not it was a failure versus a lesson?
Yeah, it's like what? So failure to me came from school. You're either A student or F student.
Okay.
If you failed, right?
Yep.
But in life, we just go through experiences, and it's just how we decide that experience was, right? So was it a failure that I lost a bunch of money flipping in 22? No, it was just something I had to go through, and I had to figure out how to pay it all back. Was it a failure, because was it a failure because I've had two business partners and a real estate team that didn't work out? No, it's just the path that it was supposed to be to get me where I am today.
So how do you go through and determine between a win and a failure?
Why classify it as a win as a failure? It's just life.
Well, that's
you know what I'm saying?
So I've always, when I look at failure, I think it's in one of two categories for me based on my own perspective, right? So it's either the weight that holds me back, or it's the step that's going to elevate me forward. And so trying to figure out how I can reframe that constantly of being like, I screwed up, or it's going to keep me from moving forward, or it's going to be the thing that allows me to go higher and forward.
Well, I think that's the mentality that you have to have when something goes wrong or it doesn't go the way you think, right? We talk about flipping all the time in real estate, right? When it doesn't go, there's the unknown.
I think you have to analyze the events that are going on in your life and say, what am I supposed to learn from this? How do I make sure this doesn't happen again? And how can I use this as leverage in my life to move forward, right? But to me, that's not failure.
So give an example of that.
I'm trying to think, man.
Coming up.
Yeah, I was just I lost $500,000 in 22.
Cool.
Okay, so
you want to compare notes?
Yeah, I was gonna say. That's not the only other.
Here's the funny part. Why?
Yeah, I had 21 flips in so 18, 19, and 20, 21. We were flipping 5 to 6 a month, right? So we were closing the year out somewhere between 40 and 55 flips a year. Every one of them was a hitter. Every one of them made money. Every one was a hitter, right? At that
time,
till
22.
Yeah, at that time I had raised a couple $1 million from private investors. And it was just working, man. I was like, man, let me go raise some real money, scale this thing, and start trying to do 100 flips a year,
right?
120 flips a year. And so that's what I did. I went and I scaled. I think it was $7.5–8 million that I had access to that I would leverage into hard money. We went from, I think I had 6 in production to 22 in production in a matter of 90 days, 4 months maybe. And then that was kind of the tail end of 21. And then that's when everything kind of started. I went through 4 contractors. I went through, people, they were doing demo, bill me for the demo, and then the house wouldn't get touched because they didn't have enough crews to get things going. So now I had demoed houses that couldn't rent them. I had, so many projects going, and as it took me 18 months to dig out of that hole of 21 projects, my last home, that last one that I ended up selling, I mean, I still hold 6 of them as rentals. Okay, no, I hold 4 as rentals. I've gotten rid of the other 2, and the last one took a total of 18 months, right? And every one of those just was like, thank God, like we had so much equity in them that I didn't have to write checks, but it was still rehab money, holding costs that came out.
Yeah, well, unpack. So if we have listeners that don't speak real estate super well, why or what catalyst did it start to go bad for you?
Well, it's just a mathematical equation. Flipping a home is a mathematical equation, right? You have your
just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. So
just because you have access to money doesn't mean you should.
You have your sales price, right? So and then you have your cost of sale, right? Then you have your rehab dollars, and then you have your holding costs. Well, when your holding costs, you budgeted at 6 months, but you're at 14 months. So now you're 8 months
at
over
10% interest.
Right.
People to work, or
correct.
What was,
yeah.
Okay.
So general contracting that I thought was going to take $50,000, it took $85,000, right? Because I had to pay twice.
They're
right?
the worst, I heard.
So they are the contractors. The contractors are the worst, right? Cost of sale is cost of sale. That doesn't fluctuate much depending on the market, right? Well, that's not true if you're not budgeting closing costs. Like right now, I budget 2% closing costs on every flip that I have, but back in 2020, I wasn't budgeting closing costs, right? So when the perfect storm would be have closing costs that come in the deal that you don't have to, so call it 2%. Have rehab go up by 10, 15, 20%, and then have your holding costs double. At that point, 100% of your profit. That's a perfect storm, right? So perfect storms happen on 10 homes.
Do you feel it was just like the learning lesson is just an over leverage or not the right buys?
Well, that's what I was eventually trying to get to. That's the best $500,000 I ever lost because I mean, think about what does college cost you? Let's say $75,000 a year. I don't need to go. I didn't go to college, but that was the best college education I ever paid for. I'm a fucking doctor at flipping homes now. You know what I'm saying? Like I understand when not to pull the trigger. I understand to not push ARV. I understand to not take that much risk. At the scaling piece, I understand how to scale it now.
Here's the big piece, though, is like now. But if you had never done it or tried to scale it, you wouldn't know where the tipping point is.
Yeah. I also know my character. There was a ton of opportunities. Every bit of my money was raised on a handshake, not one contract. So I know I had one investor that took 100% of the loss, right? It went on my books as on a balance sheet. Right, so the money went on my books, and we've been slowly paying it back. And I think I owe $60,000 left.
Yep.
So it's like I know that my character. I went 2 years with no money. Every bit of money that I made went into the real estate team and paying back debt. And I lived on my savings for 2 years. And I was blessed enough to be able to do that. But I understand integrity and character. And older Matt, you got me 15 years ago. Would have ran with all the cash that I had and said, good luck, everybody. Like, no bullshit. If you would have got me at 21, you would have gotten the dude that's just, like, doing whatever he's got to do to make end meet, and it wouldn't have cared, right? Yeah. So to see the evolution of that, of, like, what God's done in my life and to have that kind of character now, like, that's the biggest deal to me.
Yeah, you've got quite the story, too. When it comes down to, the real rehab experience, I mean, you've had several rehab experiences in your life. I mean,
I don't learn fast.
Right?
I don't learn fast.
Which one is the most meaningful when it comes down to who Matt is today and your identity?
Well, God for sure.
Sure.
For sure, God. But I think for me to, and I'll tell that story, but I think for you to understand that story in the full capacity of it, I think you got to understand a little bit of the past, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to make this about my childhood, but I think it's important to understand, like, I grew up in a household that I didn't feel like love, right? Your mother and father are supposed to love you. My dad left when I was 3. I had this hardcore biker dude. He used to run with the Dirty Dozen. He kind of hooked up. My mom was with her for 23 years. My mom it wasn't like a ton of like physical abuse, even though I got thrown some beatings. It was more like mental, like you're not good enough, you're a fucking moron, getting thrown in the corner, spit on, shit like that, And when I was 10, my mom said something to me that stuck with me forever. She was like, "You're the reason your dad left." You know, and I loved my dad. I wanted to go with him, you know, but he said I couldn't. And she just said, "Hey, like, you're the reason your dad left. He didn't want kids. So when we had kids, it was you." So like, we talk about rejection and shit. Like, the person that's supposed to love you the most, like, didn't even want me around because she lost everything she wanted. She wanted my father. She was in love with him. She loved him. I bet if she was alive today, she'd still be in love with him. Like, she genuinely loved my father. So, and I was the thing causing that pain in her life, right? Because she couldn't have what she wanted. So it's like a combination of that, and then growing up super fucking poor, boiling water on the stove for baths and like eating potatoes. I can't even eat eggs to this day because of how much fucking times we ate eggs. But I lived in a middle-class neighborhood. I grew up in South Scottsdale. I lived there because my grandparents owned the house. So we lived there rent-free, I kind of lived in a hoarder house, which is embarrassing to fucking say, There'd be times it'd be trash out, like 25 trash bags just sitting out my front door, fucking dog shit on the floor, nobody cleaning it up. And like, it's just, so we walk into some of these fucking houses and people are like disgusted. And I'm like, it's not that bad. You know what I'm saying? It's just weird. It's just
I live in this.
Yeah, like, so it's like,
normal.
It's interesting, right? And all going through that, and then leaving when I was 17, left my house at 17 years old, moved to South Phoenix. I actually ended up living with my step family for a couple of years, and then I bought my first house at 19. Worked my way up through Home Depot and all that stuff, and it was like you just kind of do life as you have to, right? Try to make your own decisions, right? I started selling drugs young, so I was like 15 years old. Got wrapped up with some dudes that were doing it, and I sell drugs. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, he was a drug dealer." Dude, I was like the fucking mule. Like, I wasn't the entrepreneur drug dealer. I had a buddy that could get the shit relatively cheap. I had no accountability at home, so we would cut it up in my.
So you were a wholesaler before.
Yeah, correct.
You were the middleman.
That was the middleman.
All right, got it.
So then we would cut it up in my bedroom. I kept 100% of the product at my house because there was no accountability. Nobody was ever going to find it. He would make a phone call. He'd call me and be like, "Hey, dude, you need to go drop this shit over here." I'd take the drugs and I'd go drop it off. I'd collect the money and then we'd split it, right? So I took 100% of the fucking risk. I took 100% of the risk, right? And it was stupid as fuck, But I did that for a long time. I did it for a long time because it was.
Right?
I would make a few $1,000s a month. It's not like I wasn't like this empire drug dealer. And it's funny. Like, I feel like some people thought like I was 10, 15, 20 grand a month at 16 years old. No, man, I was making $2,000 a month. But like, that was a lot of fucking money to me.
Right.
That was a lot of fucking money to me. Like, that was a lot of money to me. Like, we were fucking broke, So like, that was a big deal just for me able to buy my own cell phone or buy my own car or like do those things with that money. That's what it was all about.
What was the mentality shift to go from, those things that you did in the household that you grew up, and then to be this successful real estate person that sits here, that looks more like a biker than a real estate agent, right? I mean, I think the two of us can go there.
I was going to say. Who
am I talking to?
You ride a bike, though.
You ride a bike.
You do ride a bike. I'm not allowed on two wheels.
No.
I'd kill myself.
I got a couple of them. I've never had a problem with accountability. I've always owned anytime I've done something wrong.
Okay.
So I was never the guy that ran away from the problem. I always tell everybody that fight or flight mentality. I'm way too big to run. So we're fighting.
Slow.
We're fighting. And that's just everything in life, dude. I've always had to put my head down and just work through the shit.
Yeah. Right.
So I've always had accountability, even when I was getting in trouble in school, getting in trouble with the law enforcement. I've always owned the shit that I've done. So I think a piece of it is that personal responsibility, like understanding, like we own everything we do. Right. And you have to. I think it's when you place blame, or I could have been like, I'm this way, or
sure.
I've never been that guy.
Sure.
And maybe that's I don't know if it's hereditary. I don't know if it's just who I am, but I've always owned everything I've always done. So I think it's a piece of that is like understanding that, hey, shit, like you are responsible for what you want to create in your life, right? And then when I linked with God at 27, then it gave my life purpose. Like it's like you growing up the way I grew up and always believing I was worth nothing, because you have now a self-confidence issue because you've been told your whole life you're not worth anything. So
you're also told it's your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
You're told
100%, right? So it's understanding that shit, if I want to do something in life, first I got to value myself. So I had to go through this whole process of learning how to love myself.
Tearing yourself down, right?
Which is hard as hell. Like, because when you don't feel like you're worth anything, the scariest portion of my life when I was no longer scared of anything that could ever happen to me. Like, I wouldn't run from the consequence, but I wasn't scared of the consequence.
Right.
I didn't care if it was a beating. I didn't care if it was a fucking jail. Like, I wasn't scared of whatever was going to happen. I was just going to, whatever, fuck it, let's go. Let's go through it. It didn't matter to me, right? So that's the scariest part to be in life, because when you don't fear the consequence, then you're kind of you're volatile. You can do whatever you want. You're like, whatever, fuck it, let's go.
But where did that, like, what's the mentality? So you get right with God at 27, and it starts this phase of tearing yourself down, like, right? It's kind of like me going to rehab. I got to tear myself all the way down to the studs to figure out how I'm going to rebuild. What was that process for you? I think there's a lot of people out there that are in that, like, God, which direction do I go, and how do I get to a point that I can have a better life?
Yeah. You don't have, like, you really don't have options. Like, you're really going to just have something in front of you, right? So when I found God, I was 27 years old. I had 2 kids. My son Braden was super sick. And he needed this certain kind of medicine. I can't fucking pronounce it, so don't ask me. It started with like an S, right? Started with an S, and I can't. It was like $250. We had an Empower box. You guys know what that is?
Yeah.
So you know what it is? Okay, so Empower is prepaid electric. Okay. So the electric company shut off our power, right? Because I couldn't pay it. I owed them like $400. Every time I'd put money on this card, it would take 20% to my balance, and then put the rest on the card, and I'd have to go swipe it in this little fucking box that would give me prepaid electric. Okay. Well, when this box gets to $10, it beeps at you. So I'm walking around my house, this fucking box is beeping at me. Beep, 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 beep. I'm opening the fridge, we got no fucking groceries. My wife's working her ass off. I'm trying to sell life insurance like a fucking idiot, not doing well at it, right? And then I had a night job as security at Access Radius in Scottsdale.
Access Radius, holy crap.
How many times have you been in there, right? So anyways, I'm getting ready to leave. I'm literally having thoughts of like going back to selling drugs. I'm literally like, I'm going to go fucking make money the way I know how. Like, I'm not fucking doing this. Let's go. I'm going to go figure it out. Well, on top of those thoughts, I'm having this like overwhelming sense to pray. Now, I'm a hardcore atheist at this point. If there is a God, I hate him for my life, guaranteed. Like, I hate him for my childhood. I hate him for the things. Like, if there's a freaking God, I wanted nothing to do with him. I have this overwhelming sense to pray. It's a 45-minute drive. I'm driving. I'm crying. I'm like fucking freaking out in the car. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I know I need to go make $200. So I'm thinking I can go hustle some money, right? I get to the parking lot of the bar, and I literally just said this. I said, if you're real, you know what I need. I'm not going to ask for it. I'm not going to ask for it. You know what I need. If you're real, if you help me out, I'll look for you. I don't promise to follow you, but I'll look for you. And I said that, and I walked into the bar. As soon as I get in the bar, the head of security comes up, and he goes, hey, I typically work VIP, right? I typically make $200 a night, $250 a night. So I knew I was going to probably make the money helping people. And he goes, do you know how to card? I'm like, yeah. And I go, but I need to be upstairs tonight. I need to make my money. I go, my son's sick. I need to get this medicine. He goes, your personal problem's not mine. You're out front tonight. You're carding. We had a guy call out. I'm like, fuck. So now I'm working the front door. Next thing you know, you're getting busy as shit, right? But when you get busy at a nightclub, people tip to cut the line, right? Line around the block, one of the busiest nights we've ever had. I'm getting tipped, carding, getting tipped. And I'm like, fuck, okay, I probably did okay tonight. Well, I left. I'd sleep at my sister's house, and then I'd get up at like 4:30, and I had a part-time job at PetSmart that I'd go throw dog food in the morning. So I'd work all night. I'd sleep for an hour to an hour and a half at my sister's house, and I'd drive to PetSmart and throw dog food for 5-6 hours. I was making like $12-13 an hour throwing dog food. And I remember getting to my sister's house. I counted the money, made $1,200. $1,200 that night. Had enough money for the power, had enough money for my kids' meds, had enough money for the food, had enough money to do what I needed to do, right? So started just talking to everybody. Talked to LDS, Catholic, talked to everybody. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know which way to go. Like, it's just so lost. I was like, well, how do you pick? Like, but I wasn't even like picking. I was just like, shit, I better be a man of my word, right? So I started looking around. What?
I love that.
So I started looking around, man, and everybody judged me, dude. I'd tell them my story, tell them the shit that I've done, the people I've hurt, the drugs that I sold. And everybody, like, I really felt condemned, man. I really felt like I was a fucking asshole. Like, everybody made me feel like I was a piece
well, you are, but...
I am, right? And everybody made me feel like a giant piece of shit. And then my father-in-law recommended a pastor out in North Scottsdale, a guy named Pastor Rowdy Van Horn.
Rowdy.
Yeah. And,
Rowdy.
And
Van Horns, they're clients.
They're good people.
They are good people.
And we sat down and we had lunch.
You know what's funny about Ashley, dude? I don't think she's aged since we were in high school.
She looks amazing.
Such great people.
Pastor got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen his son? His son's jacked right now.
Yeah.
Saint, looks good. So anyways, we sat down, we had lunch, and I told him the same thing. And we're sitting over barbecue, so you know he should be a good guy. Yeah. And we're eating barbecue at Lucille's in Tempe. And he goes, man, your past is crazy, but let's talk about your future. And I'm like, dang, dude. I'm like, all right. So I started going to church, accepted God like 6 months later.
There couldn't be a better guy with zero judgment than Rowdy.
Zero, dude.
None whatsoever.
Zero. Plugged into his church for almost 13 years.
Do you know what's crazy about that? Like, you talk about blast from the past when you say that, like, gives me goosebumps, is that Ashley's mom was the organ player for Phoenix First forever. Yeah. Like, our wedding, played the piano, all the things. What was really cool is I got to help them with the sale of Mom's house and help them kind of go through the process. So, sorry, just random stories and connections, right? Because they're such salt-of-the-earth people.
Oh, there's not better. But he changed my life, man. I text him all the time. Stopped going to his church probably about a year and a half ago. Just got too far. I was driving from Queen Creek to North Scottsdale every Sunday for almost 10 years.
Yeah, dang.
And so he just moved into his new church, and, you know, they're huge friends of mine. I love them to death. But he changed my life, you know, and then I started running men's ministries. But the whole point of that is after that day, I started working at the nightclub every weekend out front. I started making $1,000, $2,000 a weekend working at a nightclub. From that opportunity, I had a guy come up to me. Okay, I've accepted God in my life at this point, right? And this is where it's fucking nuts. I have a guy come up to me that works in the car business at the thing. And he goes, you'd be a hell of a car salesman. I was selling bottle service, right? I was helping him sell bottles, so every time I was hustling, I was like, dude, you can talk to people. You'd make a great car salesman. I'm like, I am not going to be a fucking car salesman. He goes, you can make a lot of money. And I go, what's a lot of money? He goes, 10 grand a month. And I'm like, I'm a car salesman. Let's go. I'm a car salesman. First month first 2 weeks, I sell like 12 units. Next month, I sell 30. I end up selling 20 to 30
What were you selling?
I was selling used cars, so subprime. So we were at least to own.
Buy here, pay here?
Yeah. We were at least worse.
You were taking people from the club and selling cars, weren't you?
So we were leased to own. We were one of the largest rent-to-own car dealerships, a rent-to-own car dealership in the nation for a long time. I sold for about a year, and then he was looking for a sales manager, and he fired like 3, and I've been asking for it. He goes, you're just not the guy I'm looking for. I want someone with more network. One day he walks in my office. He goes, you still want the job? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll crush it. And he goes, I'll give you $100 a car or $6,000 salary. And I'm like, so it's a pay cut, right? And I'm like, I don't want the salary. He goes, you're the only person that didn't take the salary. Everybody else took the salary. I go, I'm going to sell a lot of cars. So built a sales team. Got to, next thing you know, we're doing 150 to 190 cars a month. Start making 15 to 20 grand a month. Still working at the bar on the weekends, making another $1,000, $2,000. We able to get out of debt, buy a house, and life started to change. You know, started making 150 grand a year in the car business, and it freaking took off.
As I hear this, you know, we're in an industry where, I love to say this, right? There's a bunch of whiny bitches in our industry, right? So, and same thing, like just in society itself.
Yeah.
And I hear your story and all the things you did, what you had to do to get where you wanted to go. Why is that so difficult for people to do these days?
I mean, this is my personal opinion, but I think we've just gotten soft, man. We don't understand. Again, we're just like, this is life. Like, life is not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be perfect. It talks about it in the Bible, in Isaiah 43, right? It says, you're going to go through the water, but the water's not going to overtake you. You're going to go through the fire, but you're not going to be scorched, right? At no time does he say, hey, homie, the fire ain't going to be fucking hot. The water ain't going to be fun. It could be stormy. It could hit you in the mouth. It could put it back down. It could go over your head. It's just not going to kill you, bro. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we lose sight of that, and I think that we get so focused on how hard it is right now or how challenging it could be, or even like you going through rehab, man. That shit ain't easy. You know what I'm saying?
No.
but it's okay. It's not supposed to be easy. Like anybody that thinks life is supposed to be easy is fucking wrong. Making millions of dollars isn't easy. You take a lot of risk. You want easy, go get a job for 45 grand a year, show up, punch a clock, go home Monday through Friday. Take the weekends off, get 2 weeks vacation a year.
You get what you put in at the end of the day.
What you put in, man. So like I'd be curious to hear your perspective, man. It's like, it's not like, is it like, what is life supposed to be? Like, we all have these expectations of what we think, but like, if you really just get rid of your expectations and you learn how to live, and like right now is the only moment we have, then you get to choose how you really spend it. The only time we're ever let down is when we have an expectation of the way we think something is going to go and it doesn't go that way. So you're like, oh shit. But if you literally had no expectations, like then you just show up and whatever it is, it is.
Yeah, that probably would have been good perspective about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of lost my shit in the car.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh shit, what happened?
Because we got all the way here, an hour drive, and Christian looks, he's like, dude, you got SD cards? No, I don't got SD cards. You got SD cards? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, between the two of you, we can't have SD cards. But you're right. But expectations should have been, okay, well, we've got time. We fix it instead of losing my shit.
Walmart Staples across the street.
I know.
It's just a money problem at that point.
It's not even that.
You're going to spend $100.
It's not even that.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think when you ask that question, life is, I think it's a journey, man. Mm-hmm. And I think you go through it, and as you learn things, my thing going through rehab changed my perspective on who I'm teaching, who I'm coaching, and realizing like, fuck, if we don't get our foundation correct, the rest of it doesn't matter. Right? And you start looking at it like, dude, you're on the health journey right now. You lost 80 pounds, and I've been on it for the last couple of years, and I know that you're doing a lot of freaking movement training and different things that you're working on, and
trying not to get old.
Right.
Stay young forever. That's
right.
Yeah.
But you've got younger kids.
I got 17, 16, 8.
Okay. Where'd the 8-year-old come from?
Forgot where babies came from.
Dude, so what principles do you feel like you're really trying to drive into your kids, knowing that, like, just talking about that same conversation while having a crazy, awesome work ethic?
Yeah, it's first of all, have a relationship with God, because I truly believe that's the best thing. And I don't hate that I talk about him so much, but I feel like it falls on deaf ears when we do stuff like this, because I don't think people realize how important it is to me.
Sure.
Right?
But it goes back to the foundation, right?
But I know the Lord, it's okay.
I know what it's like to be alone. Like, I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to sit in a bedroom and cry, and I know what it's like to feel alone. And that relationship can limit that out of your entire life forever. So that's number one for them, is I want them to have a relationship forever. They'll never know what it's like to not, unless they fall away from it. 2, character is what you do when nobody's watching.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
3, a handshake still means something if you're a real man.
Agreed.
Right? And then be a fucking savage. Like, this is your life. Live it how you want. Right? You just have to be smart enough, creative enough, and work hard enough to figure out what that is for you. And I don't care what it is. They don't have to live like me. I'm hoping they do whatever they want to do. It's not like you have to be in real estate. Like, my older boy's definitely going to college and playing football.
Yeah.
It's going to be an amazing experience for him, right? So whatever blossoms into for either one of these kids, or all 3 of these kids, like, that's all I care about. But it's have a relationship with God. Character is what you do when nobody's watching. Handshake means something.
So I have an interesting question on the relationship with God. As much as we all want that for our kids, at what point in time is it their choice?
It's now.
Okay.
Now, like, they get to decide if they do their prayers at night. I'm not the dad in there praying with them every night, making sure they're doing it. We're not even that family that's praying before every meal, right? We pray before the big ones. We pray. I'll bring. Hey, man, someone's needs a prayer when you're praying tonight. But if they do it, that's up to them. If they choose not to have, like, I don't believe you can force the path. But I think sometimes as a parent, though, I was conditioned, right? Even after I got freaking married, my parents gave me guilt trip when we were hungover and we didn't show up at church on Sunday morning, right?
I think like, right now you have 4% of teenagers have a biblical worldview. 4%. That is aligning how they see the world through the lens of how God designed it. Okay. So what is the parent's role in that? But at the same time, one of the biggest mishaps for our generation is that we accidentally tried to live out our parents' faith.
Yeah.
And
100%.
there's not a great handoff at learning how to discover your own and let it become your walk.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I always try to have in my purview when dealing with my kids. Right, it's got to be their choice.
Yeah.
But I can help set the date.
Yeah, my kids didn't get baptized until they came to me and said, I want to get baptized.
Yeah.
I didn't push it. I mean, they grew up in the church, like, because I went, so they would go. They miss Sundays. I'll go, hey, you guys want to go to church? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, see you later, and I'll go. Like, I want them to, I don't want to force, it's like me forcing them in a relationship to have with you.
Right.
Fuck, but like, that doesn't work. When is anything, you talk about our kids, right? Maybe not your kids, but my kids, like, they ain't going to get forced to do shit. They have my blood in them. They're going to be like, oh, you're going to force it? Fuck you. Watch this. Like, they would never say that to me, but in their head, they're like,
Well, it also becomes a deterrent.
yeah, like, no, dude. So, like, I think that's with everybody. Like, you know, we have a new team member, and we were talking about it the other day, and I was like, hey, are you a believer? And she's like, no. She goes, are you? I'm like, yeah. And just had a conversation around. I'm like, but it's like, I don't care that you're not a believer. I also think that's how we're conditioned. Like, I don't care if you're not a believer. I don't care if you're a drug addict. I don't care if you're an alcoholic. I have zero judgment on you.
But see, you found God later on in life where there wasn't a lot of judgment in growing up in the church, right? I grew up from the time, so did you, right? When we were little.
Yeah, I get it.
Where it's like, you know, I never understood it until I got older when you started questioning, right?
Yeah.
You started asking questions, not questioning your faith, but you started going through it like questioning, okay, well, when I was younger, you told me I should bring people to church, but I shouldn't hang around people that don't go to church, so somebody make up your freaking mind.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
think about this though, like, how many, like, honestly, if you look at your life and you look at your life as a whole and then go, oh shit, I get why God made me the way I am, so you could be around the people that you're supposed to be around. If you could be strung out on dope right now, man, heroin, nod, and everything, and I would be fine. It wouldn't make me uncomfortable one bit because I've been around it. I've seen it. That was on purpose. So I can be in the room with the guy. Yeah. So I can be in the room with the girl. So I can have the conversation. It's like, is this really what you want out of life? With no judgment.
You know, when you go back to your original question about, you know, what is life and, you know, what should it be and the happiness meter and all the other things, and I think the reality is you learn that it's a journey, and the things that we're going through are intentionally for the next person that we're supposed to impact, right? Because without your story, who doesn't get impact, right? I was speaking yesterday on clarity and vision, and I love the analogy when we were at the lake doing this retreat, and I said, look, you're playing small every time you don't throw a rock, right? So you throw a rock in the lake, and what does it do? It ripples. You just have no idea how much ripple that's going to have through your story, through what we're impacting. And I always tell the story because it's so impactful. Like, we're in real estate, and people are like, oh, well, you know, it's real estate. Well, the reality is we have a platform, right? There's other people we can impact and go through it. And I always tell the story from my dad's ripple, right? My dad was like, he always had this thing, I'm going to teach a bunch of people on Thursday nights, and he would pack up his whole staff and all his things and do his presentations, and he would do this, and he was trying to teach people how to wholesale, and his whole goal was like they would bring me deals. It never quite worked that way. But dude, I ran into this kid outside the bathroom at the building that George and I own, and sharp kid, dressed to the nines, driving a 7 Series BMW, all the like successful things, right, that we think. And he looks at me and he goes, you Steve Valentine? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, he started crying.
Oh, shit.
Dude, like, freaking, it kills me every time. He starts crying. He says, dude, he's like, in 2008, I met your dad. He said, I had no money. I just got fired from UPS. I just moved here from California. Your dad taught me how to wholesale and how to do this. And today, like, here's all the things I'm doing. You're
That's
like, man,
so badass.
my dad fucking threw a rock.
Yeah.
Over a decade ago, and there's still a ripple effect, right?
So think about this. Next step from this, and this has been big in my heart in like the last 24 months, is what if your trial and your hardship is someone else's blessing?
Oh, I know that's...
Like, think about it. When I had to change contractors, one contractor got over $500,000 worth of rehab. One new designer got X amount of money for design. One new engineer that just started his company had 5 projects on his desk that month that helped him launch. Right? So then you sit back and you go, oh shit, like, this might not be for me, but I'm in the midst of it. right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
it's the good and the bad,
dude,
too.
it's crazy if you think about it, because then you're just like, shit, this is what it's supposed to be. Stop attaching so much meaning to everything.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you've also, like, whether you verbalize or not, I don't know, but I feel like you're great at understanding what has been a painful moment and turning it into a purposeful moment.
Yeah.
And it's that same what you just said. It turns into something purposeful for somebody else,
Yeah.
and being able to use that, I think, is a huge strength.
You also just got to get really good at going through stuff. You just got to get really good at going through stuff.
Well,
You know, like in life,
but you only get good at going through stuff when you step out of your comfort zone.
and go through stuff.
And you go through stuff. You're like, oh, I'm going to go buy my first flip,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a disaster
Yeah.
because I don't know what I'm doing.
But now you got it.
Right? And that's okay. And it's
Yeah.
not that anybody could have saved you from that
No.
because you needed to go through it.
Yeah.
What's the key to be good at going through stuff? Like, just keep going?
God, what if it is that simple, bro?
Like, it's just
What if it's that simple?
Well, you have to keep going through it until you learn the lesson you're supposed to learn.
You know, someone said, "Hey, man, you lost a bunch." I always say I lost a bunch of money, right? The truth is, my P&L just looked different.
No, you just gave a bunch of people money away.
Yeah, like it's
Right?
like
It just wasn't a tax write-off.
It's only a loss if you quit.
That's true.
It's only a loss if you quit. Like if you go take, let's say I flip for another 10 years. And then you go, okay, Matt started flipping in 17. He stopped flipping in 35. Man, this year kind of sucked for him. But look at the rest of these. It was just a blip on a P&L chart.
This is the year I crushed my tax deduction.
And it carried me the next 10 years.
Like, that's all it is. It's like you can't lose if you don't quit.
Right.
So the question is, what do you have to do to not quit? Right? And there's times to quit things, and there's times to not quit things, and there's times to keep going, right?
What do you tell your real estate team, like when somebody's on the verge of like having the trial? You ever get those people that come in, they're like,
Shit.
my life's falling
Every
apart.
day.
You're like, are you fucking serious?
Every day.
Like, let's really break how bad this is
Yeah.
down, right? So
Yeah.
how do you mentor people in that capacity when they're going through something that you're like, yeah, so?
First question I ask is, what are you thinking? What do you want to do? What are you thinking? Like, where are you at? You know, because I think you got to check them where they're at. Like, well, I'm thinking about quitting. I'm thinking about leaving. I'm thinking about getting drastic. I'm thinking about taking on a loan. I'm thinking about, like, where are we at? You know, and then what problem does that solve? You know, how does it solve where you're currently at? And then I always ask for permission. I'm like, hey, can I be brutally honest with you and give you my perspective? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, shit, you just got to work harder.
How's that go over?
Well, like, I mean, let's be honest, man. What can you not solve in real estate that activity won't solve?
Oh, I agree.
There's not one thing. You need a deal? Get on the phone. You need a deal? Go knock doors. You need a deal? Go do an open house. You need a deal? Call your sphere.
Stop sitting in the fucking office doing nothing.
Yeah. Stop being traumatized by your trauma. Like, you're literally just sitting here in my trauma and go, fuck, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm
Dude,
broke, I'm
that's what
broke, I'm
trauma
broke,
does. It
I'm broke,
freezes
I'm
you
broke,
in the
right?
moment.
And then, boom. Dude, this is fire. If anybody fucking, this is so good, I'm going to say it right now. I have anxiety crazy bad. The only thing that calms me down is my wife. Like, literally, I'll ask my wife to, like, put her hands on me, like, rub my shoulders, do something. It's the only thing that's ever calmed me down. I can't even believe I'm going to say
My
this
wife
shit
doesn't
right
take
now.
to that.
No.
Put your hands on me, babe.
Put your hands on me, babe. No. But it's bad. Like, I've put myself in the hospital because of it.
Wow.
Where I thought I was having legit heart attacks, and it was always anxiety. I never medicated for it. I never did anything for it. I literally thought I was dying. I went through 40 grand worth of heart shit looking at it. The heart doctor's like, dude, I have a weird EKG. So the
Right.
whole time I think I have a bad heart. He goes, your EKG is just weird, homie. Like, your fucking veins are clean, your arteries are clean. I had like 3% artery blockage. Like 3% at 42. They're like, this is nothing. Like, you're good, dog, right? So he's like, dude, unfortunately, you got freaking, like, you have, like, whatever, it's angina, right? It's like whatever the hell they call it.
You have an
right?
angina?
Yeah. So I
mangina?
have anxiety extremely bad. And what I've learned over the last probably 18 months is as soon as I have anxiety, if I get into action, it goes away. The thing that I'm stressed out about, the thing that's giving me anxiety, if I go after it, nothing stops me. So so anxiety is like my super fucking power now. Because now when I feel it, I just get to work. I just get to freaking work, man. And if I start banging the phones or doing whatever I got to do or connecting with agents or checking on my team, things that drive revenue, because typically my anxiety comes from like, holy shit, like shit, like where's the money going to come from, right? When you're running any business, when you got any kind of startup, right?
Back to the club you go.
Yeah, right? So it's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to solve this problem? How do I tell this person I just lost 20 grand of their money? So it's like always put myself in action. So when I learned that, dude, it was a game changer. It was a fucking game changer. So I would tell anybody if you got anxiety, get after the thing. Also, if you can't work on it, why worry about it? So when you're laying in bed at 11 o'clock at night and you start getting anxiety, your heart's pounding, you don't know what to do, world's spinning, feel like you're dying, I just think, man, can I fix this right now? Can I literally do something right now to fix this? And if the answer is yes, then I go do it. If the answer is no, gotta wait till tomorrow, homie.
What do you attribute your foundation right now to? Like when you talk about your success, like you tore everything down, you found God at 27, and then what have you done to continue to build and strengthen your foundation?
Not quit, no. Like that's such a hard answer, man. Like I think first of all, I don't have a real estate team for income. I have a real estate team to hold me accountable, right? If I didn't have a team, I wouldn't work.
Okay.
I would just take what's coming to me.
Okay.
My real estate team makes me show up. I generally love others more than I love myself. So I show up for other people better than I show up for myself, and I know that about myself. So when you have 18 people that are that are counting on you, I don't have a choice. I have a real estate coach. His name's Dustin Runyon. You know him?
Yeah.
Okay. So Dustin said to me, he said, when you create your world where you no longer have a choice, you just show up and perform. So over the last 24 months, I've created a world that I don't have a choice. I have to show up. If I got to show up, I'm going to show up. I've never run from anything in my life, right? So if you got to show up, you got to show up, right? And then I've also learned that if it's on my calendar, I just want to show up and perform. I'm a performer. I like coming in. And just getting stuff done. So I block my calendar that way now. When it's on my calendar, boom, I show up and I perform. I put myself in a state where I know what I'm supposed to do. That could be husband. That could be father, that could be coach, that could be real estate person, investor. When I'm there on that appointment, I just show up an appointment. Everything's a fucking appointment for me. My wife's an appointment for me. Everything's an appointment for me. My wife even knows it. If she needs something, she schedules it. So I just had to learn to live and die by my calendar now. How the fuck do you do it?
Same.
It's got to be, right? Could it be that simple? It's the same for everybody?
It depends on how busy you are, right? I mean, I think that, when you look at calendar, white space is the enemy.
The devil.
Of anything, right? And especially with these things floating around. I mean, white space is like, shit, you can go live in somebody else's world for an hour.
Yeah.
If you want to, right? Yeah. If you want to curb that anxiety. And I think you're right, in my sense is always a couple of different things. One, I thoroughly believe, like even right now is so interesting. We have, look, in the last year, let's just call it what it is, man. I was off for probably a year.
Yeah.
Like, went to rehab in the middle of it. It took me 6 months to come out of the
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Am I going to derail you?
No.
Why rehab?
Why did I go to rehab?
Yeah, why did you feel like you needed to go to rehab? Like a lot of people, like rehab's like is it a last resort? Is it because you knew what you needed? Is it because you didn't feel like you could do it on your own? Like, why did you go, I need to go to a fucking extensive rehab and go handle my shit?
Because I had done the 18 months of dry drinking, right, where I just quit, right? That was the first time in 19, and my wife found me like Wednesday afternoon, like pretty much blackout drunk, and she's like, okay, you're going to rehab. I'm like, no, I'm not, I'll just quit. So I quit. What I didn't do was I didn't dig into what was going on internally, right? And for me, it was, I loved how my wife did it, was she didn't come to me with the ultimatum. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to get fixed or you're going to lose, like all these things. She gave me a choice. She says, hey, we're going on a family cruise and you're not coming. And you need to figure out what you're going to choose. If you're going to choose to live as a drunk and go down this road, fine, we're not going to be here. If you want to choose to figure out how we're going to fix this, then those are the choices you have to make, when we come home. And so, dude, I dug into all the hard conversations with people, realizing, like, I wasn't showing up as who I thought I was. And people called me out on some shit. I wish they would have done it sooner. But rehab was a hard reset for me from everything, right? And when you tear everything down and go, okay, I'm going to hard reset, like no phone, no computer, no business, no anything for 30 days, that's a hard stop for any of us to look at in the midst of running 100 miles an hour. Now you're just going to stop it and go, well, God, do what you're going to do, man. Because I don't know where else to surrender at this point, right? And so rehab was really, for me, it was really about that deciding factor of it wasn't the drinking, man. It was all the underlying things that I was dealing with, right? And part of it was it's interesting. The word has changed. So many times I said I was dealing with my ego, and the reality wasn't ego, it was arrogance. Right? It was an arrogance of look at me and look at all the things I'm doing, and you start to take credit for things, and then you talk about losing money, man. I learned about being a hero, right? And so the reputation I was building in this industry was to be the hero. I could fix it. I was fixing things costing me thousands of dollars, right? And dude, at the end of the day, the hero, where do they go? Freaking, they're by themselves. Who do you talk to? It's hard for me to reach out to Matt, hard for me to reach out to Blake or Brian or any of these guys because judgment, right? You're going through hard times. Now it's completely different because you're a lot like I am, right? You're just freaking flat out vulnerable about it. You're like, here's my story. How do I help more people through it? And that's where this path has gone into this podcast, and even how I coach and mentor agents now is like, foundation is freaking critical, and I can say that in second gen, right? My dad died doing this shit. My dad had no foundation. My dad's foundation was the more I work, the better it's going to get, and it ended up killing him.
Do you have a correlation between the personal and professional? Like, so for me personally, I believe that the personal has to be 100% handled before the professional ever happens.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to build your business if you're not who you need to be.
The businessman before the business plan.
Yeah.
100%. Sure. And if you look at our industry, it's fucked up. Dude, it's wrong.
I say this all the time to people, and people laugh. I go, I've met more snakes in real estate than I've ever met in the car business. And
100%.
And real estate talks about how shitty about the car business people are. Not even close to this industry.
You can do a hell of a lot more damage in real estate than you can with a car.
This industry is with some of the worst people I've ever met in my life.
Yep.
Personally and professionally. So it's mind. What got you right? So you do 30 days. You get on this health kick. Like, where are you at today? Like, what path are you on, man?
The 30 days was just the start, man.
Yeah.
It was digging so deep, but you had to fully surrender, right, dude? It's kind of like when you were 27, right? Fully surrender, fully break it all down. So you take your faith component and you start to lean back into God and go, okay, well, how far off track did I get, right? Which is one of the reasons the compass rose is tattooed, right? I know what 1 degree off where it takes me. Right, so it's just a reminder of like, stay this course.
The 1 degree is fire. I like that.
And it was the digging in, right? So when you go, and here's like the biggest thing that I saw and experienced is that too many people go to rehab out of ultimatum. They're not ready. They're there. They're not there doing the work. They're going to be, and I can say that because half the guys in my house were out drinking 60 days later. My wife told me this, that there was no breakdown in, I need to fix me or else this isn't going to go anywhere. Fully surrender into asking all the questions, right? Digging into, dude, I did 14 therapy sessions a week between group and private and all the conversations and all the different things in the books that I was reading. But that was just the beginning, and it's kind of like, correlation, the relationship with God is like, you just started it. So how do I continue to find those? We talk a lot about in rehab, like boundaries, right? How do I just find the things that bring me joy and happiness? And those are my main things, right? And so when I came out of rehab, dude, it was, I had to completely ixnay a friend of mine for 20 years because he was expecting me to save him. And there wasn't an equal exchange of energy, and he was the first person to go. And the same thing with clients, with agents, with people is like, look, if we're not an equal exchange of energy and there isn't, a good click in life, then I don't want to surround myself with it, because I've done too much of that in the past where you make concessions.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're like, this doesn't feel good. Like you talk about certain people you don't want to do business with or don't want to be around or those things. And so it was really, it goes back to Brian North. It was cleaning out the garage, man. And I had to clean out my head and my heart. And that was the biggest thing at the end of the day. Rehab was learning how to reconnect my head and my heart, because they had gotten completely
what do you tell someone that's freaking that can't go do 30 days? Like, a lot of people don't have the finances to do 30 days. Like, how do you is it after like going through this journey, is there a hard reset someone can do quicker?
If they want it.
Yeah.
But I still think that there's things that have to be uncovered that are deep rooted that have to be around it, right? So for me, it depends on where somebody's roots are in it, right? Because I think that, drinking or drug abuse or those types of things, it's not always the root problem. It's what's covering up.
Wouldn't you say rarely is the root problem?
Yeah.
It's rarely the root problem.
It is.
It's
Rarely.
typically the thing that's numbing the root problem,
Yep.
right?
But I also think you have to be willing to change.
Yeah. See,
And that's the hardest part.
I was never addicted chemically to anything. I mean, I drank a lot. Don't get me like I drank enough to where my stomach lining's gone, and they were like, "Hey, you keep drinking, you're gonna die." And I was like, "Okay, I should stop. Let's stop now." But I was never addicted to drugs. It was always the money. I was just wanted the money. The money was my addiction.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to. I didn't want to have the pain of being poor ever again in my life. So I was willing to do whatever I had to do to get the money.
And I think at the end of the day, we all have addiction problems.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And it's, what's really fascinating about all of it is when you take something like rehab, when anybody goes through to make those changes, the shame and the guilt that comes with doing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I told a lot of my clients, too, that I was on sabbatical, that I
Yeah.
took 30 days off, right?
Yeah.
Which technically it was just a dry sabbatical, and I was going to fix my shit.
Yeah.
It was interesting when I got out. I'm like, why does this feel like the guilt and shame, like I did something wrong when I went to go get fixed, and I admitted that I had something and I had to go through it. But then you get somebody that's like, I want to go lose 80 pounds, and everybody cheers you on. There's no shame and guilt to it because you're getting healthy. But then when we go through to get healthy and go through this and admit we've got a problem, it's like this big ordeal.
Isn't it? Like, you think about all the negative, shame, guilt, addiction, like all these things or all the feelings that we feel. It's funny that honestly, they're just feelings. Like, why do we attach so much to them? Like, why do we feel guilt? Why do we feel guilt taking care of ourselves? Why do we feel guilt pulling away from people?
In my own opinion, I think it's because we allow our identity to be very wavering.
Yeah.
And I think when that happens, we shift and change, man.
What about even just how do you identify who you really want to be? Most people exist. We exist on a daily basis. So, like, how would you take someone through, like, learning how to identify even the individual they want to become?
Okay, so I have a great segment on that because I think it's interesting coming out of rehab, and somebody is now sober, and guess what? That becomes their identity.
Yeah, and it's always about being sober.
Right. Everything is now
100%.
like that's their only purpose in life.
Is to be sober.
And I take issue with it where there's, you don't run around and go, I was 80 pounds heavier.
No.
I was 80 pounds heavier, right? You don't run around after you've lost all this weight and go, I'm fat.
Yeah. No.
But when you're in the rehab community, you're supposed to continue to say I'm an alcoholic.
Correct.
Or a drug addict.
Correct.
But at one point in time, are you free from that identity?
You have to be. I have a buddy that died on fentanyl, was resuscitated in the hospital, right? His wife had a feeling, calls people, ends up finding him dead in his truck.
Wow.
They end up bringing him back to life. Does hardcore rehab. It's been like 3.5 years sober now, right? Only thing that saved him is like 6'6", 290 pounds, Jack. Used to be in the NFL, right? So, and literally dies. And then that was his problem with the whole AA thing. He goes, I'm not an addict. Like, I'm done. Like, that was a period of my life. And sure, was I addicted?
Yep.
Yeah, but I don't have to identify as being this human forever. It was a season that I was an addict, but I'm not a fucking addict anymore.
So the interesting part about that is when you go through all that, that was where the time in my life where I was lost. And everybody's like, oh, you got to go to AA, right? You got to go do this.
Yeah.
And then you go into a meeting and you're like, wait, like I'm dealing with this. Like, and you start to question, like, is this the only way I can get sober? Because if this is the way, like, I'm out. Like, I'm going to keep drinking.
Yeah.
And that was probably why going to Soberman's Estates was important to me, because it was an executive men's retreat, and it was where I could get executive level treatment, like what I needed to figure this stuff out. And through all this, I still go back and I speak at the house, and I'm still in all that. But some of the guys, the challenge, man, on the, when you meet somebody like, well, how many meetings you going to a week? I'm like, none.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be free from this. It's a blip in my story,
Yeah.
and I want to share and make sure that I can help others and be vulnerable about it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to stand here and go, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm not, right? So, like, on identity, who's Matt? Who's Matt as a person? Because I think this is where we were going. Is like,
that's such a good question. The way I explain myself is, first, I'm a child of God, right? But I was put here to be of value, and I believe that in my heart 100%. Whether you've known me for 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 years, or 50 years, I just want to make sure that if we're in relationship, I brought value to the relationship, whatever that looks like.
yeah.
So that's who I am, right? That's my only goal in life, is to be of value. And it hasn't let me down since I've chosen that, right? So I stopped expecting things out of relationships. I used to be the guy that would look at, like, what could I get out of Valentine?
Oh, 100%.
What could I get out of this? Like, what could I get out of being on this podcast?
Yeah.
How could I leverage this,
Yep.
right? And I just stopped doing that. And I started looking, okay, what do I like about Steve? Am I willing to give him my time? Do I enjoy
Equal
this
exchange,
relationship? Right? Equal exchange, right? And I go, and does it serve the purpose of being of value? Whether it's to you guys or to the audience or to whoever, right? Whatever that is, I just want to be of value, man. I think that's ultimately how I'm described.
Did you ever go through that in your identity, as your success, where it was like you wanted everybody to pay you for your time?
Yeah. There's times now. There's times now even, right, that I'm like, fuck, do I really want to do this for free? Like
that goes back to the equal exchange of energy.
Yeah,
though, right?
I had someone reach out to do a speaking engagement in Washington, and and I said, hey, I need $2,500, plus pay for get me
Travel.
there and travel and stuff, and that was they didn't hire me, but I was okay with that. Right, because it didn't. I could have done it for free. I think they wanted me to do it for free.
Sure.
Right, but then I would have to lose a day. I had to So I think there's things that you charge for, and then I think there's things you don't charge for. Right. Like I don't. They offer coaching stipends for coaching. Right. I donate it back to the program. I don't want a dime from it, and I give hundreds of hours a year to coaching football.
Right.
And I would never take a dime from it.
Sure.
Because there's so much value and time that coaching my kids that I will never get in my life.
Yep.
I almost didn't coach because of it. I was like, there's no way, starting a new team, just split with my partner. I'm like, I need to grow this business. I almost didn't do it. But I'll never get these 4 years back. The opportunity to coach high school football with them and be part of that experience with them, I'll never get it back. And I'm so glad that I did it. And I would never take a dime for it.
I think that was, you asked about rehab too. The one thing that I came out of rehab with was understanding that identity wasn't in what I was doing.
Yeah. How do you go through it? Like, if someone wanted to identify, say, okay, what is my identity? Like, how does someone even go through?
Have you ever done like a words to live by exercise? No. So, do you know who Craig Rochelle is? No. Craig Rochelle is probably one of the, pastors of the largest churches in the United States, Life.Church. But he does it's literally calls it words to live by. It's a free exercise they put out for everybody. Can actually probably drop it in the show notes because it's worth anybody and everybody doing. But it's just an exercise to go through to really pick out the words that you want to declare over your life, right? If we take it really simple, go, how's your self-talk, right? It's really easy to go, do I talk, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid, why'd I do this? Everything's negative. It's the same thing with seeking negative clarity, but then also just living by the negative clarity and never taking the next steps of deciding what you want. What do I want to instill? What do I want to live by? Who do I want to be? Yeah. How am I going to describe myself? But I'm also a firm believer in immediate decision making. Tomorrow I can wake up and be who I want to be. I can leave this room after this podcast and I can be that person. Yeah. So it's very intentionally choosing to be that person and now living by that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because the identity thing is, when I look at the industry, I wanted to be known for this investor and all the things, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, man, how do I just be known for having an impact? Right?
Yeah.
And, I'm solving problems, doing things, but I'm known to be a good person and I'm known to help others or show up for people, right? And have that impact rather than, Steve's the investor, right?
Yeah.
That's not what I want to be known for, right? Yeah. I also don't want to be known that I went to rehab, right? That was part of the story. But I want to know, these are all the trials, right? All the things that are not failures, they're all lessons. But I can also look at it and go, well, at least I tried.
I
Right?
feel like you stepped into a major season when you were 27, right? When God entered your life, and all of a sudden you have this season of like, oh, I've got to figure out how to be less of me and more of Him.
Yeah.
But it's also, you had been built on what? Like, what were all the things told to you starting as a kid?
Oh yeah.
Right, that you go.
Selfish was a big one.
Right, so all these things get put on you, and they're like the name tags that we wear constantly. And it's like, do I?
Well, your parents definitely have an opportunity for growth and an opportunity to tear you down. Like, they do program us to what we believe about ourselves into our early years of life, right?
You ever read the book, The Four Agreements?
No.
It's one of the big things they talk about there. It's just how we're conditioned.
Yeah.
Right?
And we are conditioned, and we recondition, right?
Yep.
Like, so I think that being purposeful with that stuff. My self-talk is aggressive as shit. I don't know about you guys, but like, I talk to myself like a motherfucker. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, hey, fat boy, get out of bed, go to the gym.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not. But I like that.
But that's a tough love talk.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
yeah,
a downing
yeah.
talk.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's a get in the gym, like, let's fucking
let's
go.
go,
Not
dude. That's a coach
not
talk,
a
right?
let's go pussy, right?
Yeah.
Not talking down to yourself. It's a get after it. It's a motivation.
Do you guys
talk.
still have insecurities?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Still, every time behind that camera, man.
Yeah.
Social media, am I saying the right things? Am I doing the right things? Am I talking to? Do I get enough love?
Yeah.
Dude, all the things.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, and
I think that's what I hate the most about where like I'm currently at. Not hate. Hate's the wrong word. I don't enjoy it the most.
But how are you working through it?
You just don't have I don't. It's not purposeful. Let's just do it. Do it anyways. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can be insecure about something and just go do it anyways. I don't ever let my insecurity stop me from trying.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I think where people struggle is like, if I'm insecure about something, I'm not going to do it. Where I've always been like, I'm insecure about it, so I better do it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do it.
Yeah.
so I think you've probably learned some amazing lessons from coaching as well, and parenting shows you that. My favorite thing about coaching, right, is because you have to see the game from a whole new way, because you have to explain things versus just knowing the game. You have to learn how to articulate it so that it's understood and received properly. But parenting is that way as well. But I think where a lot of things go awry, especially with insecurities, is when we look at the shaping process of how we raise kids. I think a lot of times we should be shaping them, but really we're just packing things on that turns into baggage later, when really the sculpting process is really only removing. That's what the sculpting process should be. And so I just think it's also a painful process, and it's easier to just pat it back on there. Oh, and I think all the stuff that is left undealt with is what we pass on to our kids.
Don't you feel like anything worthwhile is painful? Like, is there anything that you guys have gone through that wasn't painful, that didn't
Muscle atrophy.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's exactly what it is. Like, everything's painful.
I feel everything in my angina.
Yeah, for sure, dude, for sure, absolutely. Like, I don't know. Like, anything worthwhile is always coming at a cost.
That was actually kind of my answer when you said, what if someone can't afford to go to rehab? It's like, but what can they afford to do?
Yeah.
And will they hold on to something that costs them nothing?
Yeah.
So what is the sacrifice?
I'm gonna answer that too. If it's that important, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one of those things. Like, I can look at it and go, okay, if I could borrow money to buy a house,
Yeah.
could I borrow enough money to go to rehab? Is it that fucking
I bet
important?
someone would give you the money faster for rehab than a house.
Probably.
I asked Steve a couple weeks ago that same question. I'm like, that's great, but what if someone doesn't have the money to go to that cool? And he listed out like 37 different ways that someone could find money to go.
Yeah.
And it is, man.
People build GoFundMe pages for ridiculous shit all day long.
Well, there's a will, there's a way, right? As long as you're willing to grind it out.
100%. But I think the interesting part when it comes down to that is when I look at life, and it's kind of crazy as all the success to real estate, and then to go back into a house that healed me, right? And go, man, this is just full circle for me when it comes down to rehab and all the different things, and realizing like that's another vision, right? I see like you're such a motivational and inspirational, a lot of the guys that we hang out with, and I'm like, you know what, the biggest thing that I saw in there, which is 100% on my vision board, is to build a retreat like that, but do it a little bit differently, is we are so exposed to coaching and mental and podcasts because these are just all the things in our world. when you get into a house like that, you realize that like 99% of the world doesn't know half that shit exists.
Yeah.
And they're so underexposed.
There's not another industry that I know is like, look at me. I just wrote a contract. Look at me. I just showed a house. Look at me. I'm on a listing appointment. Look at me. I just spoke at an event. Look at me. Like, you know what an agent does all day long. I don't know another industry that's like that.
I went for a test drive.
Yeah, I don't name one, bro. Like, seriously, think about it. Like, do you think a roofer is like, oh, I just put a nail in?
Jason does all the time.
But that's because he's freaking going after agents.
Yeah.
So he knows his demographic.
Yep.
So,
well, dude, all right. So as we wrap this up, I would love for the audience to know, in what areas do you look forward to providing the most value, so that if the right listener is listening, where will they follow you? How do they get insight from you? And where do you provide value?
I do 3 things. That's it. And this is like I'm standing on these 3 things. I invest in real estate, right? I have a real estate team looking for sharp agents, looking for people that want to do business. I don't care licensed or unlicensed, right? And then I coach real estate. Those are the 3 things I focus on right now. I'm not doing anything else. No other business, no shiny objects, no nothing. Those are the 3 things I do. You can find me on I am Matt Chick. It's probably easiest. I am Matt Chick on IG. And then hit me up if you guys want to do anything. I'm always looking for deals, always looking to partner on stuff. We have a joint venture program with my investment company. If you're a real estate agent that wants to flip or wants to do stuff, we'll split profits. We'll bring in the fold. And actually, it's a legit joint venture rather than just kind of send me your deal stuff. So it's a lit joint venture for people. So those are probably things I'm most excited about right now. But
and if honestly, you need a cool guest on your podcast, like this dude's pretty inspirational.
Honestly, if there's anything you need, like I had a lady reach out from a podcast one time, said her son was struggling, and she would just ask me if I'd have a conversation with him, and I said yes. So whatever, if someone's on your heart and you feel like you need to reach out.
I love it, man. Thanks for chiming in on this, man. I love this stuff.
I'm glad it's not the typical conversation. Like if you would have asked me, what are you doing to get listings? I'm like, fuck.
I'm talking to people, right?
Yeah.
No, dude, it's actually interesting where this all came from. As the 3 of us were up in Munns, just kind of talking through things and trying to figure out. Like, I've tried the podcast thing 3 times, and it's like, this gets old, and you just talk to the same people.
Yeah,
and there's not any value there. So I'm like, man, how do I take the experience that I went through and throw a rock?
Yeah,
right. See how far it ripples, because all the people that I know have been through hard shit.
Yeah.
And people don't talk enough about it. And they don't get super vulnerable about it either.
You find yourself in the midst of the chaos.
Yep.
You find it in the hard shit.
Yeah.
And then you got to learn to get rid of the chaos because it doesn't serve you.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I also just love normalizing the chaos so that people realize they're not so alone. Yeah. Oh, it's supposed to be hard.
Yeah, it's supposed to be hard.
Who is it? Luke Belmar? I don't know if that's his last name. He's super sharp on Instagram, but he talked about the other day. He's like, who said life was supposed to be fucking easy? And why is life just supposed to be happiness and rainbows? He's like, it wasn't intended.
Yeah.
Like, look at it biblically and all the other things. Like, nothing was ever intended to be easy.
It's the expectations, man. Stop. If there's one thing you could do in your life to make it better, be unattached to the outcome. Everything you fucking do, be unattached to the outcome. Then if you have no expectation on it. Not to take this longer, but I was literally sitting with my wife. One of my wife's friends asked my wife, why did you and Matt work? And she asked me the same question. And I'm like, I think it's because we had no expectation of each other. I had no expectation of who you to be or who I wanted you to be. We hooked up at 20 years old. We had our first kid. You were 22. I was 24. We were simply trying to fucking exist and live life.
Yep.
I didn't care who you were. We were both hard workers. We were both trying to figure it out and trying to make it all work. But I didn't have this delusional that you were going to be this stay-at-home wife that was going to do X, Y, and Z for him every day. You didn't expect me to be Prince fucking Charming. You knew I was a motherfucker. She was with me the hardest of times. Drinking, fucking never home. She raised our 2 kids without me first 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So it was all that stuff. It's like, if you don't have expectations of something, you can't be let down. And you can allow the process to grow. You can allow it to grow. She was an amazing person that I knew I wanted to be with, that we were able to attack life together. And now it's greater than ever.
That's awesome.
So don't attach yourself to the outcome.
Don't attach yourself to the outcome.
Don't attach yourself to the income.
Yeah, that's a
That
good one.
too.
There's no guarantees in this.
No
fucking business.
guarantees, right?
Especially
Thanks,
as an
brother.
entrepreneur.
Appreciate you joining us.
And don't be a bitch.
Yeah, don't be a bitch.
go
That's great
after it.
advice right
Thanks,
there.
man.
Don't be a bitch.
Yeah.